One of the fabulous ways to take advantage of the meat sales that you see advertised at the grocery store is to can them. By canning them, you will not need to keep them in the freezer. They are ready to heat and eat right out of the jar. You can do this with beef, with wild game, you can do it with sausage. Today we're going to learn how to do it with roast. This is simply round steak that was on sale for $1.39 a pound. It does not need to be the best cut of meat, and in fact you need to make sure that it has some fat with it. Speaking of fat, this is a completed jar of beef. It is not very pretty, but this is what it looks like. You can heat and eat this directly out of the jar. In our house we use the rule of thumb that you can keep it in the cupboard for up to a year and it would still be good to eat. I'm going to show you how to do round steak. You will want to cut them into about inch and a half size cubes and just put them into clean jars. These are the pint jars. These ones are smallmouth. You can use wide or smallmouth, and you put them in. You do want to have a little bit of fat in each of your jars. So what we do is we put in the meat in the jar first, and then we add the fat on top. As we fill this jar, you can see that you want to pack it firmly down. And so you just keep putting in the meat with very little fat pieces on the outside. Though Ross does prefer to use meat that has good marbling in it with fat included. So you have it pushed down. That one's probably a little bit too much since I do have to put fat in there. And you have it filled to the bottom of the ring. This is called headspace. Between this ring and the top of the jar is the headspace, and you want to have the headspace stop at the bottom of the ring. Then you add a couple generous pieces of fat on the top of on top of the meat. In each pint, you want to add a half a tablespoon of salt, and you just put that directly on top. This is why I love canning beef. It is a one-step process. You pack your raw meat in the jar, you put your fat and your salt on top. Anytime you can, no matter if it's meat or a produce, you want to take a moist paper towel and wipe off the top of your jar, and then lay your flat on it. If you do not do that, it will have a chance to not seal. And I will, here is again the completed jar of meat. This is sealed. After it has went through the canner, I push on that. It should not make a popping noise. If it does make a popping noise, then you did not get a good seal. It does not mean that the meat is not edible. It just means you should probably put it in the refrigerator and eat it within a day or so. So you have to wipe the top of your jar, put your flat on top, and then put your ring on and give it a nice snug. We are going to go ahead and load the canner. This is the barrier between the bottom of the jar and the bottom of the canner, and you place that in the bottom and place each jar on top. The canner is full. I don't believe I could fit any more jars in here, maybe one if I did some maneuvering. If you do not have a full canner, that is okay. You can do partial canners full of jars. This is one of the most critical steps. Every time you go to seal the jars in, no matter if you're doing meat, produce, no matter what you are doing, you must put 2 quarts of water in the canner in order to preserve them. And you just pour it directly over the jars. So remember that, very important, 2 quarts of water in the bottom of the canner before you secure the lid on top. Now we have the jars and the water. You're ready to put your lid on. You do want to make sure that your ring is securely pushed into the lid all the way around. If it is not pushed in, pressure can escape and you might not be able to get the seal that you're looking for on each of your jars. So after you have done this, it also helps, sometimes you might want to run water in it, and that would help expand the rubber a little bit. You securely put the lid on and lock it tight, and now you're ready to can it. Now we're to the stage of actually sealing the contents into your jar. Remember, in the canner, there are jars with raw roast in each jar. Put it onto your burner and turn your burner on high. The contents are going to start to warm, and you will soon see steam coming out of the steam spout. This has now been on the heat for about 15-20 minutes, building up steam inside. You will then start seeing steam come out of your spout, and as you can probably hear it, it's whistling. As this starts to steam, set your timer for 5 minutes. It needs to fully steam for 5 minutes before we go to the next step. After this has steamed for 5 minutes, this is when you take the weight and you place it onto your spout. The pressure is going to now start building inside of the canner. We are already at about 3 pounds of pressure. You want to closely monitor the pressure gauge, and when it gets to 10, then you can regulate your heat so that it stays at a constant 10 pounds of pressure. We have the roast in here. This needs to go at 75 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure. We do not start timing until the arrow, till the gauge is at 10 pounds. That is when you begin your 75 minutes of timing. Do be cautious. This is extremely hot. So you might be better to put it on a back burner if you have children. Just know that this is extremely hot. We are now at 10 pounds, so this is when you set your timer for the amount of time that's necessary. We are doing the roast, which I said is 75 minutes at 10 pounds pressure. So you regulate your heat. I just know personally on ours, once it gets to 10 pounds, if I put it on to low, it should maintain at 10 pounds. But do check it frequently, because you do not want to go into excessive heat, which it actually says caution on the gauge, and you do not want it to drop in pressure either, because then it's not fully cooking necessary to seal your jars.